we can't just be ready for a friend, like you said, get ready, like make sure you're ready for that friend. We have to know how to be a friend as well.
Yeah.
Don't just expect somebody to be a friend to you. You can't be somebody who's like, oh, I need, but be willing to be the friend that somebody else needs as well.
Amen. Amen. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome again to another exciting episode of Creative Side Podcast. We've got Dustin Scarborough here today. Of course, our co-host Shane White. We got Casey behind the switcher tonight. So welcome, gentlemen and ladies. So today we've got Dustin Scarborough. So Dustin Scarborough, we're honored to have him as a credible artist. He is a singer-songwriter whose music blends heartfelt lyrics with soulful melodies, creating a unique and captivating sound. Since 2020, he's released several singles, including Weight of Your Glory, Little Blackbird, Always the Same, and his latest release, Total Surrender, which came out in September of 2024. We'll dive deep in what fuels Dustin's creativity, his journey so far, and how he's impacting the world through his unique gifts and talents. This is more than just a conversation. It is a chance to be inspired by someone who truly embodies what it means to live creatively and purposefully. So settle in, get ready to take notes, and prepare to be moved by the extraordinary life and work of Dustin Scarborough.
Oh, you guys are too kind.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you.
Well, welcome. Glad you're here.
Yes, sir. Glad to be here.
All right. So let's talk about your music and how that all started. What told you that you knew you was going to start pursuing music?
So I have been singing ever since I can remember. I remember learning a song when I was young and my parents being like, he knows all the words to this song, which is like silly to me now, but it was so funny. And so I started singing country music. I think the first time I ever actually sang out and in front of anybody was in my 5th grade talent show. And from then on, I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. I want to pursue music. And so for years, I really pursued a career in country music. I loved country music, loved writing country music, and I still enjoy listening to and writing country music. I just don't do that as my main thing. I would say probably 2018, 2019, I just really felt like God began to call me to leading worship. And so I kind of struggled and fought that a little bit. But finally I was like, okay, God, I see what you're doing. I see what you're wanting. And here's my yes. So that's kind of where we've been then.
So Dustin, did you, was your family musical?
My mom always sang to me. She sang when she was kind of younger. She'd never really sang out much. I think she was in the choir and stuff. But so I grew up with a mom who sang to me. We'd sing in the car rides and that type of thing. But I do have some family on my dad's side that's super musical. I didn't necessarily hang out with them a bunch, but do have some musical.
Yeah, I mean, I've been following you and listening to your stuff, and you got amazing vocal, and generally that runs in the family,
right?
So I didn't know if you had other siblings or other people in the family that you're just surrounded all the time.
Yeah, I was like, my brother sings a little, my youngest sister sings a lot. She's kind of like me; she really enjoys the music, and then I'm the oldest, but the oldest sister under me, she doesn't sing, but that's okay. I was like, I won't give her too hard of a time. She'll get a kick out of this. So
awesome. So talk about your journey with singing and music, and you're a singer-songwriter. Where do you get your inspiration?
So of course, back when I did country music, I really would look at real life things, things I was going through, and I would write a song about, breakup or whatever it may be. And now the process is so different now. I always used to think country music's easy to write. I can write about whatever, but worship's hard to write because I've just got one topic. And now I'm like, man, worship is so much easier to write because I love the Lord so much.
Yeah.
I'm like, how could I not, sing his praise? How could I not just, give him all the glory. And so it's just become such an easier thing. And I mean, I'll be going about my day, and there's some times where I'm intentional, like, oh, I want to write a song about this, but like with Weight of Your Glory and Total Surrender, even, it was like God was like, hey, like, here's this, and I was like, okay, God, like, I see what you're giving me, and then took off running with it. And so creative process is definitely super different now. Like I said, grew up singing country music, loved it, but just felt like God was calling me in a different direction. So I just have really chose to dive in. There's been times I've wanted to be like, okay, Lord, I just don't want to do this anymore. But then I realized, I'm like, oh, I can't not do this. I love it. I love the Lord and love to sing for him. So
Have you noticed, are there certain times of the day or that you seem to be more creative? Like if you're going to write a song, have you noticed that there's times of the day or whatever that is more productive?
I think for me, I'm very much a night owl. It drives my wife crazy, but my mind is going like so much at night. And so I'd really prefer to write at night. And like I said, I'm up and I'm going, but I have to be mindful that we have a 4 and a 1-year-old, so not to wake them up. But also, this is going to be funny, but I write a lot of songs in the shower. Like, that's when your best thinking and thought process happens, I guess. But like, these ideas will come to me and I'm like, oh, I gotta like sing a voice note into my phone or something so I can like really work on that after, I get out of the shower.
Yeah, I find that for me, whenever I'm creating or doing video editing or something like that, it's like it's morning, early morning for me is whenever I really get into that element and it works. And I figured it's probably with everybody's that way.
Right.
When you're writing a song, do you generally get the entire song, or do you write a portion and then go away from it and come back weeks later, or how does that process work?
Yeah, so there are times where a full song will come to me, but most of the time I'll kind of get like a piece of the bridge or a piece of I feel like I'm a much stronger verse writer, so a lot of times I'll get like a verse or two, and then I have to go back and struggle through writing the chorus. I'll call my good friend Don Reddy and be like, "Hey, can you help me out? I have this idea for these verses, but I'm stuck. I can't get a chorus." So a lot of times it's more in part.
I'm not a songwriter at all, but I often think about it, and I wonder how it comes, and if it comes to some people different. Like my sister is a good songwriter.
Right.
She's a singer years ago. And do you get like the melody generally? Do you get lyrics without a melody? Is there a struggle between those two? Or
so I think for me, a lot of the times a lyric will come to me, but I also feel like I get the melody. It's like, it may sound weird, but it's like almost like I can hear the song in my head before I even have it written. And so I just feel like the Lord gives me the song, like he gives me the melody, and it's almost like there's times I've told my wife, I'm like, it's almost like I can hear like an angel singing it to me or something, because I'm like, I can just hear like the idea and I can hear the melody, and then it's like you place those lyrics with it, and it's like it's almost like I can just hear it being sung to me, and I'm like, oh, okay, like I see where this is going.
Wow, that's awesome.
I don't know, that may sound odd, but
awesome. So, is there anything that you do to prepare like your surroundings, your environment? I wouldn't say necessarily like, do you have a structured way of thing, but more like, is there a space that you like to create that helps you be creative or help you to write these songs out?
Personally, for me, it's mainly just getting in a room and locking the door so the kids can't get in there. And I say that jokingly because my little boy loves to play. So, but it is hard to find the time sometimes because he wants to be with me while I'm writing, and I love that so much. But sometimes it can be a little hard to concentrate. I would go to the church. I'd be like, "Hey, babe, do you mind if I go to the church for a little bit so I can, write?" Or if I was going to sing live on TikTok or whatever I was doing creatively that day, and she would always be super understanding. And so I'd like to be able to process, but just making sure I have my guitar, maybe a keyboard. I'm not much of a keyboard player, but I may like bang around on it a little bit just to help me get like an idea. So.
Awesome. You spoke about family. You have a wife.
Yes.
And you have 2 children.
2 boys, yep.
2 boys. You'd like to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so love them to death, of course. They are great. All I know is I can say is favor ain't fair, because I don't know how I got my wife, but the Lord just saw fit. But yeah, it's great. I would say it's, like, of course, when I first started, it was like a challenge. I'm like, how do I make time and really like balance like the wanting to take time to write and play my guitar and, it wasn't so hard when it was just me and my wife, but now that I have the 2 boys, it was hard enough with one, but now that we have 2, it's like, okay, one of us is always like chasing after one of the boys. And, I'm just super thankful. My wife is so supportive and so understanding. If I'm like, hey, I need a time to process or write or do whatever, she's like, yeah, no, go take some time, like, make time for that, because she knows I love it. And so, again, I'm trying to like help my little boy learn to play the guitar. We got him his first guitar. Well, I say we, my in-laws, they bought him a guitar for Christmas, and so like trying to teach him some things. He's still a little young. He loves playing it. He'll get in there and bang around, and he sings. He'll just break out in song. He's always singing. He loves Lion by Elevation Worship, so he's always singing that at the top of his lungs, and it's great, man. I love it.
Awesome. You said balance. There's a word balance that you, and it made me think of a question. Family is very important,
right?
Most priority, it's the biggest ministry 100%. To a man. How do you find that balance? Like, hey, I feel that I need to do this, but I want to make sure my family is squared away.
Right.
What do you consider like, what do you know that would be a healthy balance to that, to make sure that you can still pursue your passion?
Yeah. So, like you said, first things first, my marriage comes before anything. And if I'm honest, I went through a season where I really struggled, because I'm like, I know the Lord wants me doing this. But so I know we kind of talked about it, but me and my wife, we went through a really rough season, and in that, we had experienced some church hurt, and my wife kind of got to the point she loved the Lord, but she didn't really want anything to do with like church or church people, because they had hurt her so bad. And I remember, I would talk with my producer, and I was working on recording stuff, wanting to do more, and I had to call him, and we had this conversation, because I was like, I want to do this. I love leading worship. I love doing the music. I love ministry. I was like, but at the end of the day, I said, if I'm going out here and I'm ministering to all these people, but my spouse is at home hurting and broken and dying and going to hell, then I have failed. I have failed as a husband. I failed in ministry, because again, like you said, my marriage is my first ministry. My family is my first ministry. So if I'm not taking care of them, then I failed. It doesn't matter how many other people I've led to the Lord. To me, like if I end up in heaven and my spouse doesn't, or, and not to say that my spouse wasn't going to heaven. I don't mean it like that, but I'm saying like, but even my children, like if I have completely abandoned them to pursue ministry, if I've given more of my attention to the ministry than I have my kids, and they don't end up knowing the Lord, then again, I just felt like, to me, that would have been a failure. So for me, it was hard to find the balance, but I remember specifically there was a day that my wife, she was really having a rough day, and she was really hurting, and again, we were going through it, and I was supposed to go lead worship somewhere, and I called and I said, I cannot come, because I have, these were friends, I wasn't leaving them in a bind or anything, they were going to be singing too. So, I wasn't the only one, but I said, I have to take care of my home first. I have to take care of my marriage first. And, that was hard, because first of all, I'm having to tell somebody, who I respect and love in ministry, like, hey, my marriage is really struggling, but, and to cancel, like, I'm not one, I don't like to cancel. Like, if I've committed to something, like, I want to see it through. I want to make sure I take care of it. But I was like, as much as I want to be there tonight, I can't, because I have to deal with things at home.
Yeah.
So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally relate to what you were saying. It's difficult, especially in the younger years of marriage.
Right.
Me and my wife, we've been married 40 years now, but I remember those days. When we first got married, I was playing in a country band, and I started to run into the same thing that you're talking about right now, where I had to start making that choice and what was the right thing to do. Finally, I got out of that, but if you don't have the family squared away, you can't be effective anywhere else. Really, even in your job and whatever you do, you have to make sure that is. It's the first. It's your first thing, right? So yeah, I can totally relate to that. I would say that as you get more mature and time passes in your marriage, then it starts to become easier.
Right. Yes, and again, I'm so thankful, for all the Lord has done and where He's brought me and my wife from. But it was hard at times, but I'm so thankful that now, we do have much more of a balance. And I think maybe it was Cody, I saw somebody had posted, when you give a yes to one thing, you're giving a no to something else, and vice versa. You give a no to one thing, you're giving a yes to something else. And there was a lot of times that I was giving my yes to ministry, but I was giving a no to my wife, and I was like, oh, I can't do that, not have a healthy marriage. And so, learning that balance was hard, and sometimes, don't get me wrong, I still have times where I'm like, I've got to figure this out because I've kind of got myself a little imbalanced, but it's always a work in progress. But it's
and there are times that it can become where both the husband and the wife and the family all engage in that same purpose, and all of a sudden it just becomes exponentially awesome.
Well, and that was one thing. I've always felt like my wife and I were called to do ministry together, and so that's my goal, is for us and our kids to be doing ministry together, full-time ministry together. Whether leading worship or ministering through the Word or praying for people or whatever it may be or whatever it looks like. I'm with you. That's my goal.
Yeah.
So, Dustin, you stated earlier that you and your wife, you're homeschooling your children. So what was the deciding factor for that?
Ooh, good and hard question. So, us personally, just kind of seeing some of the direction that the world's going in, we just feel like it's our job to protect our children. And I understand, like, we can't protect them forever. We can't completely control everything they're exposed to. But as their parents, we want to do our best to give them a firm foundation in Christ, and even through their learning. And so we just felt like we could do that best at home. And again, we were worried about social skills, but as you can see, I'm very much a certified yapper, and my kids have those same social skills without question. My 4-year-old does not meet a stranger, and I'm sure there's other things that go along with that, but I'm confident we can help them through those things. But we just kind of really felt like that was the best option for our family.
Awesome. So, as you have become established, writing music, going out, and I've seen a lot of your videos on TikTok, and I want to say they're great. They're great, and I recommend any and every viewer who is watching right now to go check out Dustin Scarborough. We're going to leave a link to some of your work and whatnot, so that way they can come and venture and see you. So, when this momentum of music, started rolling, what did you started seeing? So that life seemed to get a little bit busier, or kind of the same? How did that look?
It just depends. I feel like there's seasons where I get like very busy, and then there's other, like, what I feel like are kind of like dead seasons, which I'm going to be honest, I kind of enjoy those. I always was somebody who liked, and even still, I really like to be on the go and doing things. But I'm kind of getting more where I'm like, oh, staying at home is not so bad.
Gotcha.
And so just kind of, for me, it does feel like there's just certain seasons where I'm like, oh, I've got this, and this. And so I've missed many birthday parties. Me and my wife had to have a conversation, because it's like, okay, some of these things I've already booked, and then things come up, and it's like, man, I'm like, I know y'all are going to the zoo today. I would really have liked to went, but we've just kind of come to an understanding. And because my wife's like, well, I don't want to not go, but I'm like, well, don't wait around on me. Like, you guys go and enjoy it. If I have to go and be somewhere because I've scheduled something, I was like, that's on me. Like, you know, I don't want you to quit living your life because I'm busy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So you had mentioned worship music. So where do you feel gravitated more to, like singer-songwriting, where do you feel like your creativity is expressed the most, should I say?
Yeah, probably through the singer-songwriter, but me personally, like, I love to just worship it. I don't care if it's I don't care if it's a song I've written. I feel most at home when I'm just leading worship. You know, I know we kind of talked earlier about me not liking to play my guitar so much, and but I love to play my guitar. But when I'm leading worship, I'm like, let me get away and out from behind this, because I just get lost in the worship, and I feel most effective and even most creative in those moments, because I feel like I allow the Lord to use me, and I feel like even in those moments of what some people, I guess, would call spontaneous worship, there are songs that are even being crafted and things that come out, and I'm like, you know, you go back and listen to, you know, the video later, and it's like, oh, like this could be a whole song, and that's kind of where I feel like I move and am the most creative is when I'm just free worshiping and just really allowing the Lord to speak through me and to me, and again, that then turns into something more.
Yeah. Have you ever had any people like in the audience or whatever come to you after those moments of just spontaneous worship and said any kind of encouraging words? Is there any testimony behind that?
Yeah, definitely. I remember one specific instance. Donovan and I were leading worship at Gather. I think it might have been one of the nights you were talking about. No, that's a different time. But anyway, one of the nights that we were leading worship, and some of the recovery ladies from Recovery Plus were there. And I remember saying I felt like there was somebody who didn't believe in God, and they like didn't even know why they were there at this night of worship, because they just didn't really believe. And afterwards, somebody came up and they were like, one of the girls said she felt like you guys were talking directly to her, because she grew up, if I remember correctly, like her father was like an atheist, like, so like they didn't even really believe. She didn't even know really what she believed. And in that same night, you know, we were informed while we were leading worship, somebody had joined the live stream, because we were live streaming it, and they left a comment, and they were like, I was going to take my own life tonight, but I happened to find this live stream, and, you know, I didn't.
Wow.
And, you know, that was probably one of the most impactful things that I've ever seen happen through that.
Wow.
You was talking about you felt most at home leading worship, and in that scenario, and I get that. And when you're working with a band, and you've got 4 or 5 other people with you there, how do you get? Just pick your brain a little bit on how you get those guys to gel together. And I know in worship, I've played in worship sets a lot, and I've played with bands that guys play together enough they can gel. And you know, my sons are musicians, and my daughters are as well. And when we're together, we can gel, because we can, you know, we kind of just look at each other, and and that's that certain thing, I believe.
Right.
Can you elaborate on that when you're playing with other musicians?
Yeah. So, for me, just kind of what I've experienced the most, it can be like challenging at times, because I'm very much a worshiper. So like, if I feel like the Lord is going somewhere, I'm like, I'm ready to go. And not everybody has been in scenarios where they've worshiped like that. And so, you know, we have to be mindful not to get too lost, because we still have a room to lead, and not only a room to lead, but we also have a team to lead. And, you know, so through, whether it be through cues, like vocal cues, or I've kind of noticed one thing that helped me. You know, I led worship at Praise in the Park this past year, and I ended up leading worship with some guys who I go to church with, which, you know, I had gotten to worship with them some, but we when I approached them, I was like, hey, can you guys do this? I was supposed to lead with another band, and things didn't quite work out. I didn't think they were going to get to be there, so I ended up asking some other friends, like I said, these guys from church, and we're like, we'll do this for verse. We gave like just hand signals, and that helped. Just keep going, or whatever it may be. And then I've led worship with other people who they were kind of just as spontaneous in their worship as I was. So, they kind of knew how to flow. And again, we still kind of, we would have practices, but those practices, we may get to practice once or twice before. And then we end up worshiping for 2 hours. And it's like, how did that happen? But, again, sometimes it's hand signals, sometimes it's vocal signals, but really just watching one another and just kind of being aware of what's going on in the room. And because sometimes I've noticed, like, there'll be a song like, oh, we just know this song is going to hit, and then you get in the room and it's like, oh, this fell flat. And so we have to be paying attention to one another to say, like, okay, let's move on to something else. Let's wherever the Lord's leading, let's go there.
It's kind of like, band comes out in rehearsal, and it's like, oh my goodness, the service is going to be, well, let's say the rehearsal was horrible.
Right.
Okay. And you're like, the service, man, we're nervous about this. And they come out in the service and just kill it.
Right.
And I've seen that happen, either way. But I've played with bands before, and being in that scenario where you're gelling is such a cool thing. But a lot of us in church now, in music, we've become so reliant on tracks and clicks and things like that. We never really get an opportunity much anymore to just kind of go in free worship unless we make a time for it.
Right, 100%.
And then just flow with that. I desire that. I haven't got to play in that scenario in a while.
I'm thankful because that tends to be more so the scenario I feel like I'm in most times. We've used tracks before, but typically we are kind of just going for it, and it creates a freedom, really, where sometimes I think a track is a great thing, but I feel like sometimes it can confine you just a little bit.
Oh, it absolutely does. There's no doubt about that. It's, and on Sunday morning service, absolutely, you're on a time frame. You're trying to get, X, and X in.
Right, 100%,
And there's, so in that scenario, but, getting into a free worship thing is, where you like to, or I personally like to, not be tied to that, where it can move and go wherever it needs to go.
Right, I agree.
Have you ever been in scenarios, and I'm kind of getting off track a little bit, but I've got him here, so I'm going to ask him a couple of questions.
No, you're good.
Have you ever been in scenarios where maybe you've got a team of people and you've got 3 or 4 of them are just spot on what they need, and you got somebody that's just way out there? Maybe it's overplaying, maybe it's just, have you ever run into that scenario?
Yes, I have. Matter of fact, without going.
No names. You don't.
No names or anything. But I know I've played with my friend Don. Like I said, we've done so much together, but we've been in instances where it's like, okay, what do we do? Because everybody else, like you said, is so spot on in this one person, and it's like, how can we how do we lovingly help them? Because you want to encourage people to do well, and it's like, but it's also you don't want to cause a hindrance to the other people. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, how do we lovingly help them and kind of point them in the right direction? Because we're like, we don't want them to not want to play or not play, but we also don't want that to become a distraction, not only to the people who are leading worship or playing the other instruments, but also to the people in the congregation. Because, if you have one person off, it can be a big distraction.
For me as an audio engineer, I get exactly what you're saying. You're a worship leader. You're really not wanting to call that out. I tend to call it out as a front of house, because it, ultimately when you're in front of house, you're signing off off on what everybody's doing.
Right. Yeah.
And if somebody is not, if they're playing a whole different piece of music, it seems like, than what's really going on, somebody's got to do something, man.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And you just got to do it in the right way.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's always a right way to handle it.
For me, one of my things that I've always done is, I found this out in a few episodes ago. We had a guy on it. It kind of talked about it, but less is more.
Right.
I mean, it seems like over the years that I've been in music, I see, I was guilty, as a bass player. I started playing bass guitar when I was 14, 15 years old, and it was during the 80s, and, it was, thumping, and I would pull off every lick I knew, every song, if I could get it in. And then finally my son was like, Dad, you need to calm this down a little bit and let's just drive this thing straight through. He was so right. And, the message I give to a lot of guys like that, man, look, just give me the basic.
Right.
And, getting, as a sound guy, getting a band pulled together, if I can get guys to do the basic, then it's easier to ask for, give me a little more here.
Right.
But it's harder to say, hey, can you
tone it down? Yeah.
Yeah, but
and musicians, they get sensitive a little bit.
They're all kinds of, I don't mean it's a bad way, but we are all kind of a diva a little bit.
Yeah. So I get it. Well, and because people want to do well and they want to sound good, and that's all great, but when it's taken away from the main thing, which is the Lord,
right?
It can be a distraction. So yeah.
Keep the main thing the main thing.
That's right. Yeah.
So I think we're getting close to the end of our episode today. So I like to ask the question, which I usually like to ask our guests. So speaking to the viewer,
okay,
if they're in their process of their creative journey in the beginning, what encouraging words would you speak to them, like as if you were speaking to yourself as you were just starting?
Yeah. So first of all, I would say don't give up. I know that's easy to say, but I know we get so frustrated sometimes. Don't get so honed in on things being perfect. And if I'm coming from just like straight from a worship leader perspective, for those of you who are, a creative in like the worship area, you can't lead somebody where you've never been. And so take that time, worship in private, spend time with the Lord in private, get in your secret place, get on your face, really seek the Lord. Because if you've done that, if you've done the preparation beforehand, if you've spent the time with the Lord beforehand, it's easy to get into that place doesn't matter if you're creative, if you're just strictly a worship leader, it's easier to get to that place because you know that place, because you have made that place your home in private, behind closed doors.
Amen. All right. Well, once again, thank you, Dustin, for joining us today. And as always, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching this episode. Please comment. We definitely want to know your thoughts on these episodes that we're doing. And most importantly, subscribe, click that bell. It helps the algorithm, help us to get our episodes pushed out there more. So we thank you so much and stay blessed out there.